Hi and welcome to another episode of Essential Lightroom. In this week's video I'm going to answer a question that's sent over via email recently asking me how to recreate a similar effect to the popular Instagrammer Mikutas. Now I've probably murdered that name, so I do apologise if I have, but what I'm going to do today is take a look at the photographs, the kind of style that she has, and show you how to recreate a similar kind of style. So one thing you'll notice when you look at any of the images that they're very desaturated except for the skin tones, which are kind of made to look a lot darker. Now I've covered adjusting skin tone to make it look like you've got a natural kind of sort of deep suntan. But in this video I'm going to show you how you can kind of do this effect. So we're going to jump over to Lightroom. This is our base image and this is what we started off with and this is what we're going to end up with. So you can see I've desaturated most of the colours, there's a strong red in there, but the skin tones are a lot darker. Now obviously you've got to edit this on an image by image basis, so I'm going to show you how I've created this effect and show you, if you stick around to the end of the video, how you can tweak this to make sure you get a great look no matter what image you're working with. Okay, so let's do what we usually do, which is start off in the develop module and take a look at the different panels and start with the basics. So let's expand that out. Let's reset our image back to where we started off with. And like I say, we need to go through, desaturate the image, adjust some of the tones in there and deal with the skin tone. So the first thing we're going to do is just come down to the contrast and give that a bit of a bump up. So we're going to take that up to get some nice strong contrast between the highlights and the shadows. Now you can't adjust the exposure based upon the image, but I'm going to come back to that later and see if I need to tweak that a little bit. Next up, we're going to jump down to the highlights and we're going to boost the highlights. We want to get that sort of nice, slightly blown out look. So we're going to push those up quite a fair way. This is a great candidate because you've got a lot of strong backlight coming in. So we know we're going to blow those back highlights out, but we're going to retain the great skin tones and the model itself. Next up, we're going to grab those shadows. We're going to crush those down a little bit. So take those down to about a minus 9, 10, somewhere around there. Whites, again, we're going to boost those up to overexposed slightly. So we're going to take those up to around 50, somewhere in that kind of region. And then we're going to grab the blacks, we're going to bring those down. So we're getting some nice strong contrast in the overall image. So that's looking pretty good. Next thing we need to do is start dealing with the amount of color that's in the image. So first of all, let's deal with the colors. First thing I'm going to do is grab the saturation, so the overall saturation across the entire image, and bring that down to about minus 50. That'll desaturate all the colors in the image. Next up, we're going to grab the vibrance and we're going to desaturate the warmer tones a little more. So we're going to bring those down to about minus 40, somewhere in that kind of region. Looks pretty good. So you can see we've now desaturated pretty much the entire image. To get a bit more contrast in there, we're going to bump the clarity up so we get some nice stark edges between the highlights and the shadows. Right about there looks pretty good. So that's the basic panel pretty much ticked off. Next thing we're going to do is go through and start dealing with the colors we want to enhance in the image itself. Now when you're dealing with skin tones, it's pretty easy to start editing. So if we jump into the HSL slider, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the saturation and the luminance. Now, the luminance is going to dictate the amount of depth, the darkness, the lightness, whichever way you want to kind of look at it. So we take any of those colors over to the left-hand side, we'll darken the tones down, the reds, the oranges, the yellows, and so on, which kind of really do accentuate and change the skin tones. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the grab the luminance slider, drag that down, and you should see, in this instance, the top will darken down slightly. If we grab the orange slider and bring that down, you'll see the skin tones are affected predominantly in the image. So what we're going to do is going to bring that down to about minus 50. That's going to generally darken the skin tone down. We're going to do the same with the yellow. We're going to bring that up this time to around about plus 40, somewhere around there. So let's take a look at before and take a look at after. So you can see the skin tones start to darken down a little bit. Next up, we're going to come to the saturation and we're going to grab the orange slider. Going to boost that up so we can put some warmth and some extra saturation back into the skins. So this is effectively desaturating anything that doesn't kind of fall into this red and orange kind of skin tone and top tone. And obviously it's going to have a slight influence on the hair as well. Next up, we're going to grab the yellow, and we're going to drop that to about minus 25, somewhere in that kind of region. So that's looking pretty good. Now, if you're ever wondering how do you target a specific color to do either saturation or luminance or hue, you can come down to the direct selection tool or the direct target tool. So you can click on this, come over, for example, the skin tone, and click and hold it down. And if you drag it down, you'll darken those tones down. If you take it up, you'll increase them. So you can see the skin tones get lighter. And if you take a look at the HSL panel on the right hand side, you'll see as I start to move up or down, you'll see the influenced colors will adjust according. So we can target it directly if we're not sure what color or what sort of values to adjust. So you get a lot of easy control. You can do exactly the same with the saturation. So you can come down to this, grab the top, for example, and we can bring the saturation down that. You can see the red now starts to get stripped out of that top. A small amount of orange has been influenced as well, but not a huge amount. So you can directly influence the colors. You can directly influence the luminance values. You can even directly target the actual hue of the color you're dealing with as well. So that's a great way, if you're not sure what sliders to adjust, to directly get in there and start editing the picture itself. Okay, so there's the before, there's the after. So you can see fairly subtle, but the skin tones do look darker now. So the final thing we're going to do is jump over to the tone curve, and we're going to just accentuate some of the tones in this image. Now, depending on the image you look at by this particular Instagrammer, some of the images have really strong black and white contrast. They're really punchy in the darks and the highlights. Other ones have a slightly crushed black look. For this example, we're going to look at the crushed blacks. But obviously, if you want to go for that high contrast, you can adjust the tone curve to get the exact kind of tonal values that you want in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of extra points in. So we're going to add some additional points. Most of those points are going to be on the intersecting value, so we can deal with the blacks, the whites, the highlights, the shadows, the midtones, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the highlights and we're going to bump those up just a little bit more to help with that blown out kind of effect. We're simply going to grab the midtone. I'm going to pull that down ever so slightly. Now these are pretty subtle alterations, but altogether they make a nice difference. The same with the shadows. We're going to bring those down a little bit. And the deep shadows, we're going to bring those down a little more. And finally, if you wanted to crush those blacks a little bit, you could easily grab this bottom left hand side and bump that up slightly, purely to taste exactly what you want to do. So just tweak those to get them where I want. So you can take a look at this before, this after. So you can see quite a difference by making small adjustments to the tone curve. Obviously you could go way beyond this and really get in there, start tweaking this to get exactly what you want. And that's really all there is to this effect. Obviously if you want to take it further, you can do things like jump down into the effects panel and you could grab the post-crop vignette, draw some attention to your main character in there. Come back up, we're going to just grab the exposure slightly because I'm kind of finding that she's looking a little dark in there. So just a couple of little tweaks to make sure we get this exactly what we want. We bring the blacks up a little bit. There we go, that looks pretty good. Okay, and that's pretty much the effect completed. So let's take a look at the before. This is where we started, so lots of color in there, and this is where we've ended up. Quite a desaturated, really sort of enhancing those skin tones to give them some sort of like nice dark warmth. And hopefully what you found is this is a really easy effect to recreate. Now this is going to make a part of the new Hipstagram preset pack, or the Hipstagram 2 preset pack, but I'm going to give this particular preset away free, so you can download that. The link is in the description below, so you can just click and get an effect pretty close to this on your images. Well, I hope you found the video useful. If you did, please hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all the new content that's added every single week. Any comments, questions, or feedback on this video, or any techniques that you'd like to see created in future videos, please pop those in the comment section below. And until next time, take care.